So in this screencast, we're going to look at loops within the microbit. So loops are to do with iteration. So it's where you're doing something over and over again. So you're repeating code. And when you are repeating code over and over again like that, it is useful to use a loop so that you're not repeating. And that, if you might need to make a change in some of the code, you change it once, not 4 or 5 times. So there are a number of different types of loops within microbit. There's a forever loop, there's a repeat loop, there's a while loop, and there's a for loop. So we're going to look at each of these and just see, what do they have in common? How are they different? So the very first one we're going to look at is the forever loop. And in this case, you repeat the code which is enclosed in the loop forever. So it just keeps on going. So an example of when you might use this is if you are playing a game and maybe you want to check to see if the score in a game is above a certain value. If that is the case, then maybe you go to a new level or something like that. Or if the number of lives goes down to 0, then maybe, the game is over. So those are typical examples of when you might use a forever loop. If we look at repeat n times, so this one is where you repeat the code enclosed in the loop and you're repeating it a specified number of times. So you know when you're starting that you're going to repeat this loop maybe 10 times or 100 times or whatever. So an example for this might be displaying a counter 5 times, decreasing the value each time. So for example, the countdown timer that you've already done, you could go back and make that into a loop, and that would be useful. The next one we're going to look at is the while loop. So in this case, you repeat the code enclosed in the loop as long as the condition is true. Now, one key thing here is if the condition is false at the very start, then the code in the loop is never run. So you need to be very careful how you construct your condition to make sure that it will at least go in once, and then you take over from there. The code will take over from there. But you just do need to be careful of that with the while loop. An example of where you might use a while loop is to repeat the loop as long as the user enters a specific input or something like that. So an example here might be if you want to display a menu of options to the user. So maybe, you want to do an add operation or a subtract operation or a divide operation or a multiply operation. So you have 4 different choices for that. So 1 might be add, 2 might be subtract, 3 might be multiply, and 4 might be divide. And then maybe you have an option 5, which is exit. So you might have as your condition while option is not equal to 5, and as long as it's not 5, it will keep going into the loop and doing the adding and all of those operations. But as soon as the user enters a 5 to exit, then you fall out of the loop. So that's typically where you might use a while. The next one we're going to look at is the for loop, and that's for index 0 to n. So it repeats the code enclosed in the loop n plus 1 times, because remember you're starting at index 0. So if you did for index 0 to 5, it would do it 6 times. So it would do it when the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's 6 times. It's very similar to the repeat loop. And an example here again might be the countdown timer, or you might use this, and actually the for loop is really useful if you're cycling through all the values within an array. You can just use the index. So for index 0 to whatever the length of the array, or the length of the array minus 1 is, and then it will just loop through the array all those number of times. So we're just going to go to makecode.com now, and we're going to create a new project in here. So we're just going to look at one simple example of a forever loop, and then we'll look in a subsequent screencast, we'll look at some other examples of loops. So in this case, we're going to look at a project which forever just shows a happy face, does a little pause, shows a frowny face or a sad face, and does a pause again. So that's just a very basic forever loop. So we're here in makecode.com, and we're going to use the forever. So I'm going to get rid of the on start. So I'm just going to bring over the forever. And forever, we're going to just show an icon. So we're here and we're going to show icon. I'm going to just choose the happy face here. And then we're going to go back in and do a pause. So I'm just going to pause for 100 milliseconds. And then I'm going to go back in again, show icon again. And this time the icon we're going to show is a sad face. Just going to bring that up here. And then just another pause again. So here we have our pause for 100 milliseconds. And now you can see over here on start, or just forever. Actually, there's no on start trigger here. So just forever, it's going from smiley face to sad face and back again. So that's just a very, very simple use of a forever loop. So in the next screencast, we're going to look at some other examples of loops.